Open up the door, it's Dave!
Who?
Dave! D-A-V-E!
Dave?
Right, man, Dave.
Dave's not here.
This was a big week for two of the companies that Elon Musk is most closely linked to, that being SpaceX and Tesla. And I wanted to share a couple of stories about what's going on with them. Now, to be fair, I just wanted to say I'm going to come back and do a story about Elon Musk later where I talk about him and his relationship with the companies, but because he's most closely tied to these, it kind of fits together in a story point here. So first off is Tesla. Now, it's interesting that Tesla decided that they were going to reduce the price of their cars again for the second time in a few weeks, basically. It's kind of an interesting mix of things that happened. Now, to kind of put it in historical context, Tesla has always been raising the price of their cars over time, just up a little bit, maybe down a tiny bit, but up a little bit and up a little bit. And it's been raising over time. And in a way, you could make the case that the cars were unaffordable to most people because the price kept going up. Now, it's interesting that back in December, the cost of the Model Y was somewhere in the $60,000 range. I don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in that range. And it was kind of expensive and a pricey proposition. Then in early January, they reduced the price to $52,900. Now, what most people didn't know is they had an off-menu price for a car that was sort of the standard range rather than the standard range plus, if you will. It's not exactly that, but it was the idea of it was a slightly different car. Like when I bought my Model 3, the thing I learned was that I could buy a Model 3 and instead of getting the standard range plus, which was the one that had the 220 miles, I could get the standard range for a couple of $1,000s less, and it only had 200 miles and it didn't have autopilot. So it was an off-menu thing that you had to know to ask for. Apparently Model Y had something similar I wasn't even aware of that brought the price down by a couple of $1,000s, and you could buy it if you knew about it. Well, within a couple of weeks of me actually taking delivery of my car, they announced that they were actually putting that on the menu and they were making that a lower price point car. So for a couple of $1,000s less than I paid, the car when I bought it was $52,900. They were offering a car that was, I think it was $49,900 if I'm not mistaken, to have this this lower range car that would be at a better price point. And that's great. And then along the way, they raised the price of the Model Y by a couple of $1,000s and then reduced it again somewhere in the time span between when I actually made the purchase and started my started the delivery process when I actually placed my order and when I actually took delivery. So there was a price adjustment in there where it went up and then back down to the price I paid for it, which I thought was kind of strange, a little tweaking of the price in there. And then this week, they actually lowered the price again. They reduced the price of the Model 3 long range, the one I bought, by $3,000. So instead of being $52,900, it's now $49,900, which, you know, from a consumer perspective, kind of sucks. I spent $3,000 more on a car than I maybe needed to. If I'd have just waited essentially 3 more weeks, maybe I could have gotten a better price. Now, there's no way to predict the future, and you can't guarantee that that's going to happen. But in a way, shame on the company for not making a decision to say, you know what, we're instead of lowering the price by that much, we're going to offer a free paint color or do something else, or perhaps even going back around to consumers who had purchased a car before and doing a little appeasement by saying, hey, they have this program for giving you supercharger miles. It's basically like a point system and you can use them for supercharger miles if you want to. How about just giving 1,000 of them or some number to say, hey, you know, here's a little something. We know that we lowered the price, but here's a little something to appease you in some way so you don't, you know, get really mad at us. We want to delight you and we want you to be our customers. It wouldn't cost them very much to do that, and they could do it in a way that actually would help them out in some way. Or throw in a little something or throw a bone or something. But you know they're not going to. And that's the nature of business. And that's unfortunate, especially for those people who bought a car in December. A friend of mine was telling me they bought a Model Y in December and spent, you know, in the 60s for it. And now it's $49,900. You know, they're $10,000 to the bad in that case. And that means that the overall cost of ownership, when I go to sell this car, my Model Y, it's going to have a lower value than it might have otherwise. Now, if I kind of take it in perspective and I think about the fact that I sold my Model 3 for a pretty good price, if I were to sell it today, the same car, I probably would lose more than that $3,000 on the exchange. So somewhere along the way, I probably would not wind up to the benefit. While I can say that, hey, the Model Y long range is $3,000 less than when I paid for it, I probably wouldn't be to my advantage to buy one now and trade in my Model 3. You know, the best deal for me would have been to trade my Model 3 in last let's say October, September, October, something like that, when it was worth more than what I paid for it. And then I could have held that money and then waited and bought this car, and I would have been out, almost nothing. I mean, it would have been almost an even exchange. Not quite, of course, but you get the idea. It would have been a much closer thing that would have happened had I taken the money out and held on to it. But there's no predicting the future, and you don't know what's going to happen there. So that's why it's kind of an interesting thought process when you think about cars changing prices. Now, it's very unusual for cars to change price, to actually go down in price. I can't even think of an example, I'm sure there are some, where the cars actually were reduced in price in some way in sort of real time. Sometimes between model years, or when they want to, reduce inventory or something, these car manufacturers will reduce the price a little bit. But generally speaking, they do not reduce prices. It always goes up and up and up, never goes down. So here's the first time when we're actually seeing it in a market sense, where the price went down and it actually will drive the market in some way. You could look at it like, hey, Elon Musk and the Tesla company are doing something that will disrupt the market in a very different way. There are no cars really in that $40,000 to $50,000 range where you look at the price point where it actually makes sense. There are some cars that are in the $30,000 range, no question, but it's there. You really want those cars is kind of the question. When you get to these nicer cars that are more efficient, have more things in them, and you can get it for a better price point, wow, as a consumer, that's a big win. So in the marketplace sense, this was a huge deal and actually will drive the market in a different way. By lowering the price, Tesla has thrown down the gauntlet for other car companies to lower their price as well, or keep their price point under control. And now that we have this battery situation under control, where batteries can actually be built in factories in the United States, essentially, Tesla is building their 4680 batteries out of their Texas facility. You're going to see that the price point will continue to evolve and hopefully trend downward. And it actually may move the markets up to some degree, where cars become more affordable. Look, Tesla was always in the business of trying to make other car companies respond in some way, and get the movement and adoption of the electric vehicle going. And there's a hypothesis that if you get to 5% of new cars that are sold as EVs, then EV adoption has taken place. And in 2021, EV adoption was at about 3% in the United States. It was much higher around the world, but EV adoption in the United States was 3%. So that was really kind of the moment when we were really close. Then in 2022, it started off really at around 3%, continuing on the previous year, but it kept climbing. And by about April or so, we were already at about 5% adoption on new cars being sold in this country being EVs. Today, it stands at almost 14% of all new cars are electric vehicles. That's incredible that the market has moved that much. So EV adoption is here to stay. It's going to continue to evolve. So now the price adjustment has to happen to make sure that that goes from 14% to a much higher percent. So that's where it's kind of interesting. I just wanted to share that. I thought that, the market adoption and sort of the smarts in the marketplace is really what drives this. And I think that is kind of neat. The second story I wanted to tell was about SpaceX. And this was a really exciting moment. So SpaceX has been in the space business for a little while now. They've got their Falcon 9 rockets and then their Falcon Heavy, which are the 3 rockets that go with it. Now they're working on something they're calling Starship. And Starship is this enormous rocket with 33 newly designed engines on it that can take off and go into space. And the first stage can be recovered, much like the Falcon 9. And then the rocket itself, the capsule part of it, can actually go into space and also be recovered and turned around again and launched very shortly afterwards. And that's amazing. The concept is really cool. It would get us more efficiently to the moon. And of course, Elon Musk has this desire to go to Mars, and it would allow us to do that because you can get a lot of thrust and get out of the atmosphere. Now, they say that this rocket has 2 times the lifting power of the Saturn V rockets, which were phenomenally powerful. And that's just amazing to me. And so they've been testing it. They've been launching it with a couple of the rockets turned on, a couple of the engines that actually will turn on, launch it, have it flip, come back down and land again. And so they've been playing with it and trying to do that. And then they were ready for the test flight. And the test flight happened this week, and they actually launched it. It went up, and all 33 rockets, apparently, all 33 engines did fire, apparently. There's some debate about that. But 5 of them stopped unexpectedly. So they stopped firing at some point. So the rocket was able to go up, get into low Earth orbit, so it actually escaped the atmosphere, started to make its turn so that they could have the booster come off and return to Earth. And then it was going to continue on and go to Hawaii, where they were going to, I think, just let it splash down in the water without trying to land it. But the concept was certainly good, that they were going to do something with it and make it continue to go. They were going to see how it went after it left the atmosphere and came back. So pretty exciting that they had this all figured out. And unfortunately, with the 5 rockets that failed when it was on its way up, they really had some problems with pitching. And as they were trying to turn it to remove the booster to bring it back to Earth, the vehicle continued to pitch unexpectedly, and they had to destroy it. But you know what? The really cool thing is that, as Mythbusters said it at some point, failure is always an option. This is something that they're going to learn from. They're going to learn a heck of a lot from what happened. They were able to light all 33 rockets. They were able to get it off the launch pad. They were able to get it into space. And then they were able to get it to the point where they were going to have the booster separate. It didn't happen, but it was so close. And from there, anything that happens is gravy, because you've done all of the things you wanted to do. You got the rocket up into space. That's amazing. And it was a phenomenal success, even though it was a spectacular explosion at the end. And when you look at some of the videos and the debris field that comes by and covered the area around the launch pad, and then you look at the explosion and the way the pieces fell back to Earth, it's kind of got a remarkable nature to it. It really does remind you of the power, the awesome power of these rockets and just how they work. And I just think that's pretty neat. And I wanted to share that because it was just so amazing that the company was able to do this and get us further along in the space exploration business. You know, we're getting closer and closer to having bigger and better things and being able to explore more and get into deeper space, maybe go to Mars. I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but the principle is certainly right. And it's very cool that we're able to do this now as a nation, as a people, as, you know, as something that's happening. And, you know, to be profitable with it is even better. So I just wanted to share those 2 stories and kind of talk about, you know, the 2 companies a little bit. I hope you enjoyed the stories today. And remember to like and subscribe. And remember, if we can dream it, we can always do it.
What's your point, David?